I'm Anthony Elliott, Director of the Hawke Research Institute at the University of South Australia. Experimentation, I think, means a whole range of different things. At a personal level, experimentation arises today because people are increasingly living in post-traditional environments. We used to, in traditional societies, what you would do today was very much informed by what you did yesterday, and it looked much the same as what you did last week. Today, in an age of multiple choice, people have a barrage of decisions that they face, and you could say that in a sense everyday life becomes radically experimental. But it's not just personal life. There are other ways in which experimentation presses in on people. I've been very influenced by the work of the British theorist Nigel Thrift, who's pointed out that experimental life is increasingly interwoven with various social and technical systems, that there's a kind of heavy informational overlay. I'm thinking of things like touch screens and location tagging and augmented realities. These are just the broad infrastructures, as it were, in and through which lives in the expensive, polished cities of the West are now lived, and it's the kind of experimental backdrop, you could say, in and through which women and men try to chart out the various options and dilemmas that they face in their daily lives. We obviously see this in terms of the high-tech and media sectors. If you look at social media, there are a range of platforms today, all the way from LinkedIn through to Facebook and Twitter, where there are various forms of experimentation going on. The kinds of experimentation I've been researching, though, are the ones that are perhaps not quite so obvious. I'm really interested in the ways in which you can look around various sectors of social life today and think, yeah, it's just business as usual. But if you view it through a different optic, you can actually see that, no, it's not the case. People are really, I think, engaging in new forms of experience, new types of experimentation, and also seeking very curious forms of escape from traditional ways of doing things. We live in a world today where you see over 1 billion international flight arrivals, but equally, along with that, over 3 billion passengers being carried on domestic and international flights. That's posed enormous challenges for airports. Airports, in a very short space of time, have gone from deriving the bulk of their income from the provision of aeronautical facilities and services to now, today, deriving their income from the provision of non-aeronautical services and facilities. So they've actually really been pushed to the very edges of having to experiment. And if you look at what's going on at airports, I think you can see quite bold and interesting forms of experimentation taking place. And I've been doing this by looking at developments, for example, at Incheon Airport, where you now have things like not only a casino and a golf course, but an ice forest where passengers in transit can do some skating, through to airports such as Changi in Singapore, which boasts the world's tallest slides. These are, to be sure, forms of experimentation imposed from above, but I think the other interesting thing going on now within airports is that passengers, transumers, are experimenting from below. I think one of the big shake-ups of a lot of media and a lot of newspapers today is, if you look at what's going on, there's been a shift across from the model of, expert knowledge delivered by journalists, expert knowledge delivered by opinion leaders that is then dispersed and dispensed to publics waiting to lap this up. Publics now today are increasingly co-creating with newspapers and with media agencies. That's a whole new model. It's a whole new way in which news is produced, in which knowledge is produced. And it's not just knowledge and information being produced. Increasingly, we're in an age now where knowledge and information is being shared. It becomes part of a network-driven society. So newspapers are really having to engage with that. It's been an enormous challenge for print media right around the world. And I think what we're seeing today is we're only at the very earliest stages of how newspapers are seeking to respond to these kinds of challenges. Newspapers and media agencies are trying to work out the answer to this exact question. And, you know, in terms of trying to look around at best practice and see places where, you know, there are interesting sorts of answers to these questions, one can't help but be impressed by a range of agencies, like whether it's the Guardian newspaper, a range of other agencies come to mind. And it's not immediately obvious as to how you derive income from the new ways of doing things. But of course, if we look at the network society, if we look at a range of platforms that are being established, it may well be the case that the most important thing is to actually involve your readership, to involve your consumers in the conversation and seek to derive profit, seek to derive income in other ways. And I think that is increasingly what a lot of newspapers and print media are now seeking to do.